all new hires who join the company from the moment that they finish their application all the way through the end of their first day. So I've really become a resource for a lot of people, and especially students. That's pretty challenging. They do and really get an idea of how to be successful when they go out there. So that's where I kind of fit into that, and then hand them off to my colleagues of HR.
That's great. Thanks, Rob. I don't know if you're cutting in and out for everybody else. Was Rob's audio cutting in and out for anybody else, or is it my audio?
A little bit.
All right.
Not too much.
Okay.
I'll put in my headphones. That I think will help.
I think we caught everything you said, but there was just a volume change, a lot of it. So, but okay. I think, Rob, we can explore this later, but in terms of helping students, having so many different majors that you can recruit from really can tap not only the student's skill set and what they study, but they can marry that with what their passion might be if it's healthcare, or they want to help people and get into the healthcare industry. That's a nice combination to be thinking outside the box. So I want to look into that later, but thank you for that introduction. So Jordan, how about you? Tell us about Insight Global.
For sure. Yeah. So my name is Jordan Boss. I'm a talent acquisition with Insight Global. Insight Global is a staffing and recruiting firm, which is kind of funny because no one's ever heard of staffing and recruiting before. There's no major in staffing or anything like that. But, that being said, essentially what staffing firms do is we're in charge of the recruiting process for, Fortune 5,000, 100, 500, 1,000 size companies. So kind of provide that recruiting service every single day. So kind of what staffing firms do. Insight Global, we are the third largest for IT staffing across the country. Kind of what Rob said a little bit, IT staffing is kind of like our starting point, but then we have multiple divisions in accounting, finance, engineering, federal, healthcare, pharmaceutical, you name it, especially during COVID. Pharmaceutical and healthcare recruiting went up, it skyrocketed. So a lot of other industries. What I purposely do is I obviously, the campus recruiter or talent acquisition. So as a company, we only hire entry level, meaning every single person, our CEO included, started off entry level and kind of grew within the company from there. So, really with us, we place a huge emphasis and importance on hiring the right people, not just for entry level recruiting and then getting into sales, but for the career. So definitely that's kind of what we look for, is someone that kind of matches with our shared values, right? You don't have to have a specific degree with us. I went to UMass Lowell. I was a marketing and management major. I got my MBA from UMass Lowell as well. But we have all majors. For example, our CEO was a history major. Some of the sales managers in Boston were pre-vet or English. So, we don't look for a specific degree. Rather, instead of just that, what we look for is someone that with an upbeat personality, self-motivated, career-driven, wants that environment where it's, performance-driven. So obviously, a typical sales role. But we start off entry level and we kind of promote from within. So we want people that obviously want sales, but also more importantly, like that match our values, that match our company and kind of what we stand for and what we want in our kind of employees. So kind of a little bit about what I do, and I take them kind of what Rob said I take them from LinkedIn or a career fair or an application through the entire process until they start, and then I kind of pass it off to the management team, or they also have a mentor. Everyone has a mentor from day one. So I kind of hand them off to the mentor and say, hey, good luck. Let me know if you have any UConn underclassmen that you want me to message. So I do that for the most part. And I've been here for about a little bit over 6 years.
Great, thanks, Jordan. And I'm going to revisit that staffing and recruiting versus headhunter, that sort of space, third-party recruiter space, Perfect. Because I think that's important to explain sort of the differences and sort of the nuances of that industry. So we'll come back to that too. Greg, for Target, tell us about Target.
So a little bit about me. My name is Greg Pear. I'm a campus recruiter with Target. I cover campus recruiting for all stores in New England, upstate New York, Pittsburgh, and West Virginia. I've been with Target for 21 years, started in the stores myself first, called an executive team leader, which is an assistant manager, and then moved up to a group training leader and now doing campus recruiting. That's a little bit about me. I went to school at Rhode Island College got a management degree with a human resource concentration. So I'm actually doing what I always kind of wanted to do, which was interesting. When I joined Target, I didn't really know. I knew I wanted to get in HR, but then when I met the recruiter, I knew that's what I wanted to do. He was just the personality he had, very upbeat, and that's kind of what I always kind of visioned myself doing. So I'm doing what I want to do, which is nice. In terms of what I do on campus, I'm not looking for cashiers. I'm not looking for people to staff the store. In terms of team members, I'm looking for leaders in the building. So I look for two things. It's pretty simple. I look for seniors that are looking to be executive team leaders. An executive team leader in any other company and in retail would be an assistant manager. And so we have 5 positions in the stores. One is the supervisor of the front end, one is supervisor of clothing, one is supervisor of general merchandise, one is a human resource leader, and one is asset protection. I handle those. We don't hire as many because how we get most of our staffing done in terms of our leadership team is through the internship program. So an intern is a junior who for next summer, it's a summer program only. They would be graduating either December of 2021, May of 2022. And they would go to a 10-week program. And at the end of that program, we would want to make them an offer to be an executive team leader. So we would know we'd have them coming out when they graduate. And it's a position that, you know, I think people think Target pay or retail doesn't pay. Coming out of college, you're going to make $61,000 at Target as an executive team leader. And within 3 to 5 years, we want you to run your own Target store. And a Target store director in New England or in Connecticut, I will tell you, makes $117,000 average, and their bonuses can be anywhere from a $10,000 check to an $80,000 check. Money's not everything, but I always normally say that to kids to get them kind of focused, because I think most people, and Lisa and I have had this conversation, I think college kids think Target, I don't want to be a cashier. I'm not looking for cashiers. I'm looking for leaders. The one thing I would say, which Jordan also brought up, which is pretty cool, 40% of our store directors do not have business degrees. So I am not looking for a major. I don't care what major you want. The number one characteristic I look for is leadership. So that's what I would finish there.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. So now everybody has a better sense of who's in the room, right? We know who the champions are, and I appreciate that. I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions, we did get some in advance and we have questions all set, but I would encourage you, if something we say sparks another question, please throw it in the chat or try to get a word in edgeways around me. I don't tend to stop fast and give long enough breaks for people to unmute themselves, but I'll try to be conscious of that. So the elephant in the room right now is hiring, right? We all pick up the paper and we see doom and gloom, you know, nobody's hiring, everything's virtual. So to the three of you, are you hiring? What kind of rates? What are you hearing? Is it the same as before? Has things changed in terms of just numbers and just the time spent that you're looking for talent and the talent you need?
I will tell you, we are definitely hiring because in this whole pandemic, Target is doing better than ever. We had the best second quarter we've ever had in our entire history of Target. And so we are literally continue to hire. We haven't stopped. And we're going to be opening new stores. We're absolutely opening new stores now this October, last week in New York City and some other cities. So no, we're still hiring. We're still hiring interns. The same number of interns I hired last summer, and I still had the program. I shortened it, or not I did. We shortened it from 10 weeks to 6 weeks to give the stores where they were going to go do the internship some time to adjust to the pandemic. But the plan is already to hire the same amount of interns we hired last year. And in some groups, not this group, they're hiring more. So everything's go. We're still looking for talent. I've already found some UConn kids we've already made offers to, but we're still looking for interns in the Connecticut area, especially in Southern Connecticut. That district is looking for 3 more interns.
And to be clear, those are in-person internships, right? In-person
internships in a store. So we have, the internship is a store internship. It's leadership based, where they're going to come in and learn how a store runs based on the 5 executives in the building. They'll rotate through them. And then at the end of the program, which is nice, which most companies are doing now, is we make them an offer. So they'll go into the senior year knowing they have a job, not having to worry about going to see Lisa or Nancy's team, because they have a job lined up with a career path. And again, I know Target's not for everybody. This is not a corporate office setting. You're not going to be sitting at a desk and analyzing data. You are literally going to be on your feet probably, I would say 4 to 8 miles a day that you're going to walk inside a Target store and running that, dealing with guests, dealing with vendors, dealing with team members, dealing with issues. But it's something, it would match me perfectly because I don't like sitting at a desk.
And those are well-paid internships too, right, Greg?
Yes. Yeah. So for our Connecticut area, they're paying $22 an hour for an internship in in the Boston area, they're actually paying less, which we still haven't figured that out. No, excuse me, $21 an hour in Connecticut, 22 in Boston and New England area. So yeah, it's well paid. And it's 40 hours, so it's guaranteed. You know, you multiply the 40 hours times your rate, that's what you're going to get paid for the summer, which is nice. And it's 10 weeks, June 7th till August 13th.
Great, thank you. And one more question, and then the same set of questions or line of questions sort of for you, Jordan. I know that I interrupted you at least once already, but to Jordan and then Rob. But international students, Greg, sponsor or no sponsor? No,
we do not do sponsorships. We do sponsorships for some internships up at headquarters, but I don't deal with those. But for the store positions, we do not do sponsorships. No. Right.
Okay. And I see Rob's already answered it for him, but we can talk more about it. Jordan, I interrupted you when you started on answering the first question.
You are always fine. It's the difficulties of virtual stuff. So yeah, kind of similar to what Greg was mentioning, we are definitely hiring. So it's kind of funny. We're hiring less than years past, but that's not because of COVID. Essentially what we kind of did, and I mean, like many entry-level jobs or especially sales positions, we did see, a high sense of turnover in those first, year or two. So with us, because everyone starts off entry level, so at the very bottom. So once you get promoted and once you see success, you don't leave the company. We have what we call the lifers, right? But we kind of saw that a little bit. So we kind of decided, let's revamp our whole entire development and training process, because it just wasn't working and we didn't want to have turnover. Like, we want to promote 100% of our people. So we actually kind of created what we call the 100% conversion model, meaning we have, not just winging it, saying, yeah, let's just hire 20 this year, but instead we have finance, the analytics team kind of put together what each office should hire. So we're hiring less people, but we're promoting more people, if that makes any sense, right? So for us, we're definitely hiring, although it's lower numbers, and every office is different. We're 58 offices across the country. We're probably going to hire between 650 and 800 people for the year. But when you break that up per office, it's going to be between 5 and 15, 20 people per office, depending on the size of the office. For example, Boston's going to hire about 15 to 18. Stanford's going to hire 5 to 10. Harvard, same kind of thing. Obviously, we're nationwide too. So we're definitely hiring less, but we're definitely actively hiring. From my perspective, I'm interviewing the same amount. We're doing virtual interviews instead of on-campus interviews, and then we're doing virtual interviews with our teams wherever they want to go location-wise. So I talked to a couple of UConn students at the fair a couple of weeks ago. Then I did an interview with them. Now they're having interviews set up with New York and Boston and various parts of the country. So, from an activity perspective, I am as busy as ever. Actually, a little bit more busier, because I can go from UMass to UConn to Purdue in 3 straight days, and I normally couldn't have done that. So, I would say I'm actually kind of a little bit more busier with our schedule, and it's a very competitive position to get. So, we do talk to a lot of students because, kind of like Greg was saying earlier, we hire all majors, and at the end of the day, I can't look at a resume and say, you're a great fit for this job or you're not a good fit for this job. You need to have that conversation, because, you could be a history major and be really motivated to be in a sales position or a leadership position. That's great. But you could have a sales internship and be, not interested in those kind of things. Or maybe you want to go to law school after, being a management major. It's not going to fit for Insight Global, because, you can't really do both. It's be pretty difficult. So for me, I'm definitely busy screening candidates, doing, virtual interviews, phone interviews, and then setting up those candidates with our offices, but definitely still hiring for sure. As I mentioned, depends on the office, how many people. One thing too that, I know that a lot of people mention is, a lot of like sales or marketing or business type positions aren't open until second semester. Not for us. We definitely, are putting offers out, already for December grads, a lot more December grads than May grads, but we're getting the May grads in the process. So definitely very busy on that sense. And we do have an internship program that's actually expanding from last year. We probably hired about 30 or so last year. We want to hire between 50 to 100 this year. 1 or 2 per office. So we're starting that process. That is for juniors going into their senior year. So once again, like Greg mentioned, December 2021 graduates or May 2022 graduates. That position is paid. Once again, it's going to be hourly depending on the office, but around 15 to 22% dollars an hour, depending on obviously location. And then obviously that recruiter role entry level, that's base salary, once again, depending on the office. For example, in like a Hartford, it's 40K, Boston's 45K. But once they're promoted, base increase, car allowance, phone allowance, expense account, uncapped commission. Typically in your 3rd year in our company, you're hitting 6 figures, and it only goes from there. So a lot of opportunities. So I kind of have to kind of explain staffing to people first and then interview them. So it's definitely a little bit of a kind of 2-part job, but definitely still interviewing, still hiring. We unfortunately do not sponsor for visas, but we do have opportunities up in Canada. So if they're from Canada, awesome, that works for sure. But yeah, I would say definitely still busy.
So Jordan, to be clear, so everybody understands, because what you're recruiting for is people to work directly for you. You are not recruiting for your clients. So
Yes,
I think you need to make that clear to everybody here.
Yep.
So that
Yeah, very
we are
clear.
all
Yeah,
on
it's a
the
little
same page.
confusing because sometimes I'm recruiting recruiters. It's sometimes a little difficult. So
Right.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely not me. I'm not third party recruiting whatsoever. So yeah, I interview and I hire for the recruiter account manager position. As I mentioned, everyone in our company starts off entry level as that recruiter role. That's really the training. Obviously, it's a full-time paid salary job, but typically about 10 months, you learn the sales process. You learn staffing, recruiting. You learn how the industry works. Almost like, if you go work at Target, you know what Target is, right? You don't have to explain what Target does to someone, but with us, you kind of have to explain how to do it. So it's a lot of on-the-job training, role playing, mentorship. We send you down to Atlanta where headquarters is twice in your development process, but you never stop developing. We have a leadership academy. We have women leadership council, diversity council. So we always, keep growing from within. But yeah, I definitely hire for the company, not for our clients.
Right. So that's a big distinction. If anybody needs further clarification, we're happy to get into that. Rob, how about you? You told us before we started this that you guys are growing, and you gave us some numbers. How much?
Yeah, so this year was very interesting for us. So when COVID hit, things kind of slammed on the brakes for a lot of external hires, but we still had a lot going on. So everyone I know has heard of telehealth now. It's a huge thing. We soft launched ours back in January. We weren't seeing a ton of usage. Then COVID came and that dramatically changed. So to give you an idea, when January hit, it was about 1,500 minutes a month. February, we were probably up around 25,000 minutes. COVID hit, we were doing 3.5 million minutes a day. It was absolutely wild. Just the amount of things that were happening. So through that, there were a lot of really interesting internal changes here at ECW. We had a lot of people shift out of roles that they were in into other parts of the company. So that telehealth team essentially quadrupled in size. We had some other teams that were doing some new product development that really needed to accelerate their kind of growth pattern. So they moved a lot of people. So some of the teams that I actually support, that a lot of fresh out of college students go into, lost 50 or 60% of their workforce to other teams. So 2021 is going to be a really interesting year because there's going to be a lot of backfilling going on and a lot of movement in that direction, which will be great because that will give a lot of students some opportunities. But we still even have roles open now because a lot of these teams are now catching up going, oh, I lost 4 people. I need to replace them, plus take on that additional workload that I have. So I actually need 7 people. So ECW is still continuing to expand. We're still just doing a lot of new things. We issue new versions once a year, usually twice. We just have so much happening right now. It's going to be a really exciting time to be in healthcare IT. And as we kind of continue to push the envelope out there, it's going to be a really good time to get into this. Something else that we do very much like what Greg and Jordan's companies do is we promote from within as well. We love people to come in entry level and work their way up. We've seen a lot of great people who started off in an entry level position who've now been with us. We're only 21 years old. They've been with us 15, 16 years. They're now VPs. They've taken on awesome abilities. They've taken on all these things that they could do. We've even had people who technically, based off of the job requirements, weren't qualified because let's say they didn't have a bachelor's degree, but they came in, they learned the product, they learned skills, and they were chosen over someone else. So we don't necessarily, just as Greg and Jordan said, we don't just sit there and look at a resume and say, oh, you're qualified for this job. We need to have that conversation. We need to talk to someone because let's say there's 1 million software engineer students who will graduate in 2021. We don't want all 1 million of them. We want maybe 25. And we want the ones that come in, they show the leadership, they show the ability to learn new things, they show that kind of drive to really add on to their skill set. And then when we come to ECW, number 1, they find a home. Number 2, they find a family. And number 3, they find a place that truly will take care of them. Some things that we do that are very, very different that kind of sets us apart from a lot of companies out there in tech. Every year, our average raises are 5 to 10%. That's been the case for the last 10 years. We've also done company paid out bonuses. That goes to every single employee in the company where the owners say, hey, we made a lot of money this year. We want to say thank you for helping us get there. Here's 10% of your salary as a check. Thank you. Everyone's eligible. So just all these things that we do internally that give companies the ability to really draw people in, I think ECW pushes that to the max. So we're happy to do that. And then on the international student thing, we've got about 1,400 US-based employees. Over 1,000 of them are sponsored on some sort of work program. That could be OPT or green card or H-1Bs or a variety of different things. More than happy to do that at our cost. We do not bill the person who comes in for anything. As long as it's a sponsored position determined by the US government, we're happy to do so.
That's great, great to know. And I'm sure everybody on the call definitely was interested in that one, ears perked for that one. So you've all mentioned the career fair. And one of the big questions right now for our champions is, how do we help students find jobs? And more specifically, Rob, to your point, when you said we want to hire the ones who show leadership and we want to show the culture of our company, how do you do that in a virtual environment? They're not coming onto your campus, really, and they just, how can we help our students learn those things, and how can we show them how to sort of figure out a corporate culture and project their leadership qualities and project over their laptop what they have to bring versus in person?
One for students, and this is, I'll use an example of something that happened last week that is kind of the epitome of this. I had someone apply for a job, on paper 1,000% qualified, probably could have done the job with their eyes shut. However, when we started talking about the role and what the requirements were, and I was asking some very specific questions, the person I was interviewing with read me line by line the job description and told me how they did all these things. And one of the things in there says, works with ECW customers to help make sure that their account is successful. And I said, wait, hold on a second. How do you work with ECW customers? You don't work for ECW. That doesn't make any sense. So it gives a very this kind of false image of someone. What I tell everyone, and when I meet with students, is I tell them, go into an interview and go into career fairs and be yourself. Every single person in this room has a different story. Every single person has things that matter to them, has a different set of truths. And if you go in there and you are yourself, recruiters and HR professionals see that, and they're going to be able to tell who is being themselves versus just trying to read off a piece of paper thinking that they're telling me what I think I want to hear. Because that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear what their true story is. And I'll give you an example. Someone who really epitomized this. Back in February, we had an on-site career fair at ECW. It was for a couple of sales positions. We had all these people came in, people who had been in the field for 30 years, 10 years. We had some people who were looking to break into the field. The person we ended up hiring was the least qualified. He worked at Best Buy out on the sales floor, but he was by far the best seller because he came in and was just his true, genuine self. The team loved him. So they hired him as a contractor. He came in, did 3 months. The day he was eligible to be hired as a permanent employee, they said, hire him tomorrow. I don't want to lose him. He is absolutely crushing it on that team. They hired him over a 30-year sales professional because he came in and showed us who he was, and he fit exactly what we were looking to do and what we were looking for someone to get out of that role. The team honestly could not be happier. He's now coming up on a year with the company, and it's by far one of the best hires that team's made in a long time. And that truly is what companies are looking for out there, not someone who can just read off a job description or try to present an image of what the ideal candidate is, because there's no such thing. Every person can be an ideal candidate if they are themselves and they meet the qualifications of the job.
Thank you. Jordan, how does someone present that, as Rob is saying, how do they present genuineness through a camera?
Yeah, great question.
What tips do you have?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, and it's good for us because, or it's tough for us because obviously normally it's in person. So in person, it's a lot easier to drive a conversation and show your personality and your approachableness on in person. A little more difficult on a video call. The good thing is because, at the end of the day, unfortunately, we are very selective, which means the people that we end up moving forward with can even do it virtually. So I think that's something that, they're able to do that. but it's definitely very difficult. For me, I think just number one, small talking is something where, picking up on social cues. You can be virtually, and you don't have to be in person to pick up on a social cue. For example, if I'm talking to a candidate and I mention that I went to UConn, which I didn't, but for example, say I mentioned I went to UConn, I'd want someone to say, awesome, what year did you graduate? Where'd you live on campus? Were you involved on campus with anything? Or maybe they're from the same hometown as me. I go, oh, actually, I'm from there too. I want them to be like, awesome, what part of town, or where'd you go to middle school or high school, instead of, oh, cool, anyways, back to my resume. So I think, picking up on the social cues is massive. I think being genuine, I think also, doing research and passionately speaking about yourself and your experiences, not just reading off your resume, is really important. Because for us, it's more than just a job description. So the people that I set up phone interviews with, or I talk virtually, I tell them at the beginning, hey, I don't want to run through your resume job by job. Tell me your favorite job. And I want to see like the passion. I want to see the excitement that they're talking about. So sometimes I say it doesn't really matter what you're talking about. It matters how you're presenting. For us, also, we do a final presentation at the end of our final interview, and it could be a PowerPoint, it could be whatever they want to do. There's really no guidelines, but we want to show. We want them to show us why Insight Global. Why should we hire them? What separates them? What value do they add to the office? And I say, don't talk about your resume. Talk about your family and your upbringing and like what that made you. Throughout the process, you told us that you're competitive, money motivated. You're a big team player. You're positive. What made you that way? Like, we want to know more about than just your resume. So I think, I straight up tell them that's what I expect. I don't want them to kind of try and figure it out for me. Like, I'm not trying to trick them, right? I want to really get to know them genuinely, and the people that, Rob said that are genuine, that are actually going to be themselves. Fantastic. It's sometimes a little frustrating for me when people go, oh, yep, I'm a environmental science major. I'm like, awesome. So, why'd you apply to the job, or what made you interested? And they go, well, I think I could really fit my background into this because it's really similar. I'm like, it's actually the opposite. But, tell me, like, maybe you were in a sorority and that really made you take on leadership roles and you love how we only promote internally. Or, maybe, yeah, you were an environmental science major, but you're also a server and you love that job so much because it's fast paced and working with customers. And I go, perfect. That's a great fit for us. So, like you said, like, you could have a perfect resume, but I'll take the server that paid for college themselves rather than the person that just, went through college and didn't do anything besides go to class. So I think that's important. But also what you mentioned, I think it's tough to show our culture to prospective candidates because you can't see the office. Normally we show you the office. It's high energy, no cubicles. It's really a great environment. So it's kind of tough to do that. So I'm actually going to share in the chat. We have 3 different YouTubes that we kind of made, videos that we made that we send all of our candidates that have interviews. And one just kind of shows us who we are, the culture. One shows Be the Light initiative, which is kind of made during COVID, where we have a responsibility to help people find jobs, opportunities. And then also one just kind of shows our shared values, which is kind of our company culture. So we share those with the candidates, and I hope they look at that and they kind of pick up, great, this company cares more than just about my resume. And the ones that do well kind of, I don't want to say buy in, but they kind of see that and go, all right, this is what the company's about. This is what I should show, my personality. But yeah, I do my best job trying to tell them, hey, like, don't just run through your resume. Tell us about who you are as a person. And that usually the people that do well pick up on that and they kind of listen to what we're talking about.
Great. I love the phrase that a recruiter used the other day. It's a conversation, not an interrogation. So I think that sort of fits what you just said. Greg, tell us how you can tell through that camera. You're doing interviews virtually. What are you looking for in those candidates? How can you touch, feel? Not that you're touching or feeling anybody in person, but what are you getting from that?
Yeah, the big thing, I kind of copy what Jordan does, what we do at Target. We're looking for that personality. So it's really going to be an easy conversation. It's going to be a conversation. I'm not drilling them with questions. It's just going to be comfortable because I have to see you working in the store, dealing with guests, dealing with team members, dealing with vendors. And it's going to be a conversation where you're comfortable talking to people. You have an engaging personality that we want here at Target. So it's really going to be that flow. And sometimes, and I know some people have it and some people don't, and some people have to practice. And that's the one thing I would say. Jordan's really right. It has to be genuine, but some of the kids get so nervous that you really do. I would expect them to practice kind of that 30-second elevator pitch and talk about themselves and feel comfortable. Like, do it in the mirror, do it in the shower, driving on the bus, whatever, but be comfortable, because some kids are just so robotic and that's not real. And I want them to feel comfortable with me. But it's really about that engaging personality. Can I see them dealing with a guest in the building? Can I see them dealing with, more importantly, can I see them dealing with a team member? Are they going to be comfortable? Are they going to be a leader? One of the things we use now is, they have to be a leader, but they have to be what's the word I'm looking at? It's a simple word. a caring leader. They have to be caring about people. So, because that's what we're looking for. You know, you're not going to come into Target and start yelling at people. And this isn't the military. That's not the way we lead. So we're looking for people that really care about people, that would pull a person aside. And so we you know, I love hearing stories about group projects and someone was struggling and they just kind of pulled them aside and found out that they were having problems at home. And so they kind of took a little bit of their work. Those are the kind of stories I love when I'm talking to students, especially during interviews.
So do you see, tell me, and I don't, and anyone can answer this first, are there differences in your interview style or in the interviews themselves beyond it's a camera now versus in person? Are you asking different questions? Are there different things we should be coaching our students on to say, you know, this is virtual, this, you know, be conscious of this, in addition to that? We're just looking for advice on what to help our students get through this interview process successfully. Have things changed? What's different now that after COVID or during COVID that might have been that we might not have been aware of?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a couple things. I think number one, just pretty easily or obvious, I would say, if it's a virtual interview, because normally if you're going in person, you're wearing a you know, whatever dress code is for the interview. You're going to their building, their interview room. Here, you know, it's in your living room or your kitchen. So I tell my candidates that do virtual interviews, be really you know, cognizant of your surroundings, right? You know, be aware of your surroundings. So make sure that no one is behind you cooking breakfast, or there's no one playing, like, you know, watching TV right now. Because, you know, I'll be honest, you know, I've had interviews where like they have like the basketball game on behind them, and it's hard to pay attention, you know, when I see, you know, a game behind them. So I say, hey, like, find a nice quiet space, rent a room if you're on campus, or go in your room. You know, it doesn't need to be business. Like if you have your bed behind you, that's perfectly fine. But make sure that there's nothing distracting behind you. Make sure that although it's a virtual interview, make sure that you're, you know, listening to the dress code guidelines. So that's always important. Make sure that you have good audio, visual, Wi-Fi. It sounds kind of obvious, but make sure that it's good, because nothing's worse than starting a virtual interview and then 20 minutes of it is just spent trying to, you know, get their face or trying to connect with them. So I think that's also, you know, really important. And then also don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't understand how to use their video platform. Obviously, there's WebEx, there's Zoom, there's Teams, so many different things. So never used Teams before, just ask me how to use it. Like, once again, my job is to help you get the job, right? So I want to help you kind of learn it. I'll go on like trial runs about, hey, like, let's do something for the 3 o'clock this afternoon, just a test run on Microsoft Teams. So, you know, we understand it's brand new for everybody, but yeah, definitely make sure that dress code is good, nothing's distracting behind you, good video, good Wi-Fi. Make sure that you know how to use the platform for sure. And then I guess the only thing I would ask differently for questions would be, I want to know, hey, like, so during COVID, you know, what has changed for you? For example, people that had internships that got canceled, like, I love knowing that they had the internship. So I know they did that, but also people that lost the job. We don't talk to someone that already graduated or lost an internship. Hey, like, so what have you done in the meantime? Have you just kind of sat around and just, oh, well, woe is me, no COVID? Or, hey, like, I got my internship canceled, but I actually picked up more shifts at the diner. Or I work for my dad in construction now. That has nothing to do with my job in sales, but I love the fact that you just didn't want to stay bored. You actually were like, hey, I need to stay busy. I need to make money. Like, let's try something else. So I love the idea of someone that's gritty, resilient, that can overcome that. That really sets themselves apart from a candidate that just says, yeah, like, my internship got canceled, so I just kind of hung out at home. Like, you know, I'd rather have some person that kind of did something about it.
That's great. I think that is one of the question of 2020, right? What did you do during the time that you were stuck in your basement or whatever? Rob, Greg, either?
I think the other thing that's been really interesting, and I'm sure Greg and Jordan have seen this as well, is with now everyone working remotely, you're not having those face-to-face interactions. Students, and this goes for professionals too, follow-up is important. So if, let's say someone decides, let's say they're interviewing with Jordan and they get partway through the interview process and they decide, you know what, this isn't what I want to do, or this doesn't sound like the right fit, just sending a simple email to that person that you've been working with. Hey, Jordan, I'm sorry, I'm no longer interested in the job. I'm going to pursue something else. That can be huge, because you never know when Jordan might come in handy again, or Greg might come in handy, or I might come in handy. So telling students to have that good follow-up. I just had a recent experience with someone who is getting ready to graduate from another school, who is interested in joining a team here at ECW. who the only reason I found out that they got a job was they never followed up with me after our interview last week. They posted about it on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was waiting for you to let me know if you were interested in moving on to the next round. And now I find out that you got something else. Okay, that would have been helpful. If you weren't interested, that's okay. It's not going to hurt my feelings. No HR professional or recruiter is going to get upset if you say, hey, this isn't the right fit for me. I would much rather hear that than chase you down, chase you down, chase you down, or 4 minutes before your interview is supposed to start, hey, I'm no longer interested. Just having that good follow-up skills will absolutely set you apart, because you never know where that person's going to circle back into your life, or that person could be a resource for you to get you that next job 5-10 years down the road. Because honestly, the people that have not done that, I tend to remember their names. They kind of stick with me. I'm like, where's that person? Yeah, maybe this isn't the right fit for you.
Yeah, or you burned me once. What if you switch jobs and they applied to where your new place? I've heard horror stories like that, and I think that's a good life advice. Don't ever burn bridges, right? Greg, what do you think? You're on mute.
I missed it because I hit the video. I was trying to do what Jordan did and send some videos. So I'm sorry. Say again. The video was playing on my, I couldn't hear you guys. Sorry.
That's quite all right. No, we're just looking at what changed, what's different in the virtual world with the pandemic.
Yep.
What are you asking differently? What's different?
You know, the questions, the interview process hasn't changed. We still do the amount of interviews we have all the time, but exactly like Jordan says, I try to prep them for the interview when they're interviewing with the store director or the district leader. I try to make sure they understand, you know, what is their background, who's exactly what Jordan says. Someone shouldn't be cooking breakfast in the back. Go, you know, go to career services if you're on campus. If not, go find the quietest room you can. That's the only thing that I would suggest. But no, the questions haven't changed. We still do. The only thing we're testing, I will say that we're testing for intern candidates only in some different markets, and I'm one of the markets, is we're doing one interview only. So a store director is interviewing where normally they would then go to a district manager. We're just having the store director do the one interview. I do the screen, and then they go to the director, the store director, and that director makes the decision. So that's it. We're just testing it in about half our groups in the country to see what's the difference in terms of, because everything, you know, like Jordan said, everything's about conversion. We're hiring someone. We're not looking for someone to do this, to put it on a piece of paper or put it on their resume or to gain experience. We're truly, when you take the internship, I read during the offer, you know, we're going to make you an offer at the end. Is that something you're interested in? If not, then this probably isn't a good fit, because we're not looking for kids just to do an internship and put it on their resume. We're looking for few people that look for Target in the future. Now, not everybody knows, but at least you're giving it a shot. If you're just doing it, you know, and just putting it on a resume, or I just want to gain experience, I hear it's leadership. That's not what I'm looking for. So we're just testing, see what's the convertible, you know, how, the district leaders are right about 70%. Can we have store directors? And we tested it in Buffalo last year, and they were at 75%. So, you know, why are we putting a candidate through an interview, 3 interviews, when we could just put them through 1? We're testing it to try to speed up the process for ourselves.
Interesting. Does anyone have any questions that I'm missing? Obviously not in the chat, but does anyone want to ask any questions? I know we're looking for things like, so while people are thinking or typing, what are your thoughts, panelists, on pass-fail? So students now have the option, because of the online option, to make a class pass-fail. Does that matter to you? And if so, how would you like them to explain that or not?
I'll just say, I'll be real simple. Mine, it doesn't matter, because we don't look at a GPA. We're looking about a personality. So to me, it doesn't affect me at all.
Yep, same thing. I would say GPA for me is a selling point, almost like an internship would be, where if you have a great one, awesome, talk about that. If you don't have a great one, Also, just I would say just don't mention it, but also maybe if it's a 2.8, but you brought that up from a 2.1 as a sophomore, talk about how you grew in that kind of thing. So once again, I would say use it as an advantage. Don't use it if it's not great.
Yeah.
It's really not as big of a deal. I don't think we've ever asked someone for a copy of their transcript or anything like that. But like Jordan said, that's a really good way to show how, like, let's say you do have that 2.8, but you had to work full time to put yourself through school. I would much rather take that person who's already proven that they can take on that additional challenge than someone who has the 4.0 but doesn't have anything else on top of that. They just did school, nothing else. I'm probably going with the 2.8 person because they're going to be able to pick up those challenges and do those extra things that we inevitably always get looped into.
Right, as otherwise, or as needed, right? Yeah. In terms of tips for students in this environment, I had a student give me an aha moment, which was actually a little off-putting to me that clearly I haven't done my job, but where they said, I was explaining why it would be good to go to a career fair, and he said, but I already applied for a job. And it didn't occur to him that having a second contact with a company might be a good idea. So any thoughts on that? Do you like multiple contacts? I'm guessing I know the answers to these, but to share with the rest of the group, you know, how much is too much? Does it matter? Does it matter at all? Or how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I love people that take the initiative. So if you apply on Handshake, which I very much recommend using Handshake. Obviously, you can apply on LinkedIn, but Handshake for me, I just personally like that. And if someone applies or goes to a career fair, no matter what, if it's at UConn, it's going to be with me, which is fantastic. So, but I love if someone applied and they follow up with an email saying, hey, or call me. Hey, I just applied. I want to make sure that you saw it. Any questions, feel free to give me a call. This is my availability. Or, hey, I just applied online. I wanted to show up to the career fair as well to show that I'm genuinely interested in this job. For me, that's fantastic because we all know when someone's applying on Handshake or LinkedIn or wherever they're applying for jobs, they're applying to 20 jobs, right? So if I call them after an application, hey, I saw that you applied, like, all right, great. Where was that, right? So an application is great, but when someone applies and follows up, I go, wow, this person is really genuinely interested. They just didn't click a couple buttons on Indeed. So I really do appreciate when people do follow up with me. Kind of what Rob said earlier, you know, if it's before the interview, after the interview, or before I even ever talk to you, I do respect that and I like that. And that kind of helps you get to the front of the line, right? Because if there's 10 people applying, but you just call me with your availability, I'm just going to talk to you now. So once again, I like people that take initiative.
How much is too much, Jordan?
I would say, it sounds funny. I always say this like dating, you know, if you message once and then you message again, and you haven't heard back after twice, which I always respond, but if you don't hear back twice, then I'd kind of leave it at that. Or, you know, also I would say, like, you know, listen to what one of us is kind of telling you. For example, a lot of times our students that apply, especially because it's early in the process, I'll say, all right, great, this went well. Definitely the next steps is I'm going to pass your resume off to the team in whatever office you're looking for. If they decide to set up a virtual interview, I can give you a call back to set it up because that's what I do. I pass it off to the team unless I'm like, I love this person from the start. So that's kind of what I do. So if you follow up, I respect it. I appreciate it. I kind of want that. It shows you're interested. But if you follow up more than twice after I told you, hey, like this is the process, then it's kind of like, all right, follow directions a little bit. But I would say maybe if you don't hear back, message, follow up. And then if you don't hear back after that, then I would say, you know, either you have your answer or, you know, the company's kind of dropping the ball.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
No. I don't. The more the merrier. If you want to reach out to me, that's fine. I like the points of connection. That it kind of like what Jordan exactly says. That tells me you're genuinely interested in working for Target. So if you want to come to a job fair, you've already been interviewed. I actually invite people that I know I'm interviewing before the job fair, like we connected through Handshake. I'll tell them to come to the job fair. You know, even if it's virtual, I told them to come. I want to meet you in person. I want to kind of meet you in person, meet you virtually. So no, I like those. That tells me you're interested. So the more the merrier.
I think Jordan had the perfect analogy. It's very much like dating. If it looks like a text message screen where it's all you talking and someone hasn't gotten back to you, that's probably a bad indication. But you definitely want to follow up, but not too much. You want to be that person who shows, hey, I'm interested. Hey, this is something I want to do. I want to be a part of your company. But if you're calling me every day, emailing me every day, sending me a LinkedIn message every day, that's probably not going to look well, because our process is very similar to his. And if I like you, I'm going to take your resume, send it to the team. It take a little bit of time to get feedback because they're doing other things. They've got to look at schedules, figure out when they can set up a time to meet with everybody. So just kind of managing in between those two things is the best thing to do. You don't want to be that person who takes 2 weeks to respond, but you don't want to be that person who's in my inbox twice a day, every day, because then you're that person. And then I'm like, oh, geez, they're back again. Oh, now they're calling me. Oh, now I got a text message. Here we go. You got to find that happy medium.
Gotcha. I probably asked 3 of the wrong people because you guys are all very conscientious and you will answer the student the first time they send a message. So it's kind of hard because other employers are not quite as good about it as you are. And that black hole does exist, but not with you individually. So that's a tough one. What kind of advice do you have for our participants today in terms of advising students on finding a job? I mean, personally, I would say don't get discouraged. That would be one of my pieces of advice. And people have other things on their plate, so you're not their one and only thing that they're trying to cover. But what kind of things would you advise our advisors, so the folks on this call, to help their students through or with to find the right job?
Well, one of the things I would definitely do is reach out on Career Champions and find an alumni to be your mentor, because that would be number one. The other thing I would tell you is to have your students utilize LinkedIn and find all the UConn alums and reach out to those companies. People want to, UConn alum wants to help a student to say, I love where I'm working, you know what I mean? And they'll connect with you, and then you can find out if it's the culture you want. So I'd really make sure they're really utilizing LinkedIn, but also the Career Champions to get a mentor and find out who else is a UConn alum that's working a company that you want to work for. Yeah.
Thanks for the plug, Greg.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think definitely using your UConn network is fantastic. I also would definitely recommend, because I mean, there's actually the one issue that I had with the virtual career fair, because obviously at an in-person career fair, I can talk to 50 people at once, you know what I mean? But virtual one is only so many time slots and so many things like that. So I definitely recommend, I want all majors to apply, all backgrounds to apply. But one thing is I definitely want to make sure that, they don't just apply or sign up for a time slot, but they are doing it with a purpose, not just, oh, I heard the company's a great workplace for women on LinkedIn, I should apply, but they're looking to be an analyst and this is a sales role, right? So, because so many times I had candidates and I didn't want to be blunt, but I go, hey, so why did you apply? This is you're a software developer, this is a sales role, this is the opposite. I go, oh, well, I heard great things about the culture. I'm like, yes, but it's still a sales role, you don't just work in the culture. Yeah, you have to like the job as well. So, or flip side, some sales roles are completely, this is the opposite of our kind of sales roles, it sounds like, but some sales roles are completely out of the office. You don't talk to anybody else. You're just on your own. With us, it's really collaborative. So sometimes they go, oh, I don't want a culture around people. I go, you're going to hate us because we're inseparable. So I always want people to use LinkedIn, use Handshake. One thing too, a lot of times people have LinkedIn messages, they don't ever check. That's us. We're messaging you. So definitely use those. But before you respond or decide if it's for you or for not, do your research. Look us up on LinkedIn, use your network. For example, I had a girl that I think actually was referred by a career coach, whoever it was. Thank you. She's fantastic. She's interviewing in New York in about 2 weeks. She reached out to a couple of UConn connections that we have because we have a lot of Huskies here. And the person she reached out to was one of my best friends. So she's like, hey, do you know this girl named Courtney? She's interviewing in New York. I go, yeah, she's great. And she goes, yeah, I'm talking to her today. I'm like, perfect. So you're getting a lot more, insight, no pun intended, but you're getting a lot more insight from the company, from people that, have your exact background in schooling that are working here. So I definitely think, LinkedIn, Handshake, utilize your career coaches. And, obviously whenever they do apply, if they think they're interested, apply, talk to one of us, because like we mentioned, it's a conversation. I'm not going to be like, wait, you're not qualified for this, or you're not interested in this, I'm going to get upset. No, like the conversation with me is the preliminary, hey, is this a good match on both sides? And then we move forward. It's not really wasting my time if we take 10 minutes to kind of talk about your background, if you're interested or not. That's what I want you to do. So don't be afraid if it's, oh, like, well, I'm an environmental science major, I'm not sure if I'm a good fit. Nope, like, let me be the judge of that. Let me tell you more about our company. And then I know someone on here, I think it was Summer, I want to say, that was involved with either low income housing and things like that. That's kind of where I come from. And, don't think that's a negative. Don't think, oh, like, well, I went to the Stanford UConn and said that's not a good, nope. I love people that have that. That shows that you're resilient, that you're gritty, and that you're doing everything in school while also having another situation, so I love that. So don't think, oh, like I don't have this GPA or I don't have this major or this degree, like I can't apply. Absolutely not.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin on this. And this is something I just ran into one today. And what made me think of it is resumes are an important part about the application process. And I think people end up spending a lot more time trying to make them fancy instead of functional. So I'll use a couple of things that I've run into in the recent past. I got one today. It must have been 9 different fonts on it. It went from size 26 with the name down to size 8 with the details in there. So I had to just make the fonts all at least the size that I could read, throwing colors in there. I'm colorblind. I can't see when it's green. To me, it comes out some weird color. Have 8 different colors in there. I'm just usually by that I'm frustrated now that I'm trying to figure out all these different things. So just by making it a little bit easier to read instead of throwing all these special things in there can make it a lot easier for that person who's going to end up reading that, or when it gets parsed into an ATS system. The ATS system doesn't, and this is a myth that I think it's put out there, the ATS system decides whether or not you're a fit. It's usually not true. I'm sure there's companies that do that, but most of the time it's people who have to sit there and read it. And if your resume doesn't transfer over easily, there's not a whole lot I can do with that. So if you can just put it into a PDF form or a Word document and make it clear and simple, says, here's where I worked, here's when I was there, here's what I did, here's where I went to school, here's my personal info, that will go a lot further than when I have to spend 15 minutes trying to make your resume even something that I can read. That can be a big challenge and oftentimes makes it pretty frustrating for those people who get your resume first. Or if I have to do all this work just to get your resume to the point where we can send it to a hiring manager that they can read that, they're probably going to say, okay, yeah, I'm not interested. I can't even read what color this is. Hot pink is not a good color, please. Or other thing that, and this is a funny story I love to tell just because it's so ridiculous. I had someone apply for a job, I'm going to say it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. An email address can send an interesting message. It should not be sexykitten@aol.com. That usually does not go over well. Someone will read that and probably start laughing. And that was a legit resume that I got. I didn't even know what to do because it just doesn't send a good message. If you're applying for a job, something clear and simple, or at least something that's going to make it easy for me to recognize when you email me back, that will go a lot further than sexykitten@aol.com.
And I think I read last week that you should name your document your first and last name so that it's easy for you as well to find in your inbox as opposed to resume or resume 2 or
I get so many
target
of those.
Resume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you just put your first and last name, it's very easy for me to then go find because I get 50 to 200 resumes a day for all the different jobs that we have open. It's really hard for me to keep track if they are all named resume or resume 2020. If it's your first and last name, very simple for me to find.
Right. So I want to respect everyone's time, and I know we advertised that this would end at 5, and I've already disrespected your time in that regard. So I want to thank our panelists. If you have any parting wisdom, I'm happy to give you, but I don't know if others have the time to stay for it. But I want to thank you. I want to thank our guests and participants. I am 99% sure that our panelists would be glad to connect with you on LinkedIn if you want to connect and or follow up and ask a question. And just as we have heard, don't just send a connection with, I heard you on the panel and with a little explanation that'll go a long way. So thank you to our panelists. I very much appreciate your time and I hope everybody stays healthy.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.